Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the series of PIC Fireside Chats. I'm joined here, my name is Alex Burnett, work for LocWorld Conference, and I'm thrilled to be Ruan of XTM International. Welcome, Dave, how you doing?
Hey, Alex, great to be here again.
Yeah, thrilled to be here as a panel session. We had some of our former winners. We have a slightly different today. The PIC could not be possible without the help of several amazing women innovators, their contributions over the past few years. And Dave, tell us a little bit about how the idea for this panel came together.
Well, I don't know how far back you want me to go, Alex, but the PIC itself is 4 years old. So in child terms, it's a toddler who can speak and run, so quite dangerous. We came up with the idea really as a way for innovators to have a stage and show their innovations and share that idea, that nugget of an idea with other innovators, with the peers in the industry, and then to get maybe some validation on where they should bring it, or is it actually good enough? Is it usable by people already? And that's where the PIC came from itself, and we run it as a kind of a Shark Tank, Dragon's Den type of a format. Depending what side of the Atlantic you're on, you'll probably know one of those two shows. And it's come leaps and bounds in the last 4 years. We're very happy with how it's progressed and the innovators we're able to give a stage to. So in terms of this fireside chat, well, we thought this was a logical move forward for the PIC. We had a great one over a month ago and are delighted just to have women innovators tell their story and explain to us a little bit about what kind of platforms, approaches they took, how did their journey look, what were the left turns, the right turns, the things that helped them move it along. And so I'm really excited to hear this panel today.
Great. And we're moving into our 9th Process Innovation Challenge that's going to be a part of the next LocWorld conference. It's called LocWorld Wide 43, taking place in January, on January 27th and 28th of next year. And we're really excited. We'll have two preliminary, January 13th and 14th. Those are going to be free to the public. And we hope that the information on those preliminary sessions and the links to register and join for those will be published very soon. Check back at our PIC website, pic.locworld.com. Watch the final round. You'll have to be registered for the main. That final round is going to take place at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time on January 27th. Before I introduce our panelists, I just wonder, Dave, there might be some folks out here we briefly introduced. Tell us a little bit more about the Process Innovation Challenge and how does it work?
Well, we've tried to keep it quite simple. We give innovators a chance to submit a paper. We then shortlist that to a preliminary round where they can pitch for 3 minutes. So they have to get all of their innovative soul, spirit, and idea out in 3 minutes with 3 slides. Now, if you haven't tried this, I suggest you do because it's quite difficult. And once we run the preliminary rounds, we have a short list of somewhere between 6 and 8 innovators who go to the final rounds at LocWorld Wide. And the audience votes. We have a group of process and technology experts who we call the PIC Dragons. They provide guidance. They also ask questions and are part of the voting block as well. And that's basically the PIC.
Great. That's what I love about it. It's simple. It's very straightforward. It's 3 minutes for innovators to get their innovations out there, and that they get it's been amazing. The stories, that's why we're doing these panel series, because we love hearing the stories. And with that, and without further ado, I'd like to start introducing our panel today. We're going to be moderated today by LocWorld's co-founder and Parrish. Thrilled to have Donna with us today. And our 4 panelists are going to be, first of all, we have Alessandra Binazzi. Alessandra has been a process dragon, one of our judges for the competition for several years. And her company is Alessandra Binazzi Consulting. Good morning, Alessandra. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here. Next up, we have our PIC winner from San Jose, California last year, Lori Silverstein from SPI Global. She's the Senior Vice President of Global Sales at SPI Global. Thrilled to have Lori here. We also have Esther Curiel. She's the Localization Operations Manager from Indeed.com. Esther has served as a process dragon as well. Thrilled to have you here, Esther. Thank you. And finally, we have a PIC runner-up from 2 years ago. We have Patricia Paladini Adell of Patricia Paladini Consulting. Thanks for being here, Patricia. And I hope I didn't stumble too badly over everyone's names and job titles there. But without further ado, thrilled to have you here, ladies. Thanks for doing this panel for us. I'll turn it over to you, Donna.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Alex and Dave. It was fun to get this organized, and we appreciate your setting it up.
Thank you.
To start this off, I thought that perhaps we could go around the table and you can talk to us about your own innovation journey and then how you came to be involved with PIC. I'm seeing us in Alex, Esther, Lori, and then Patricia. So we go in that order. Alex, would you mind going first?
No, of course. So I got involved because Dave approached me to be a process dragon, which is wonderful. I started my career at a company called Dragon System. I thought that was like perfectly fitting. So I really felt like I owned that dragon role. And it's been really cool to be involved and to see the evolution of the PIC since the beginning, and to really see how many innovators we have in our field that don't always necessarily have a platform to showcase their innovations. And so that's been really cool to see all the potential out there. And also to see the evolution of the PIC. I think we continue to see more proposals and better proposals, like more interesting innovations coming through. So I think it was a question of just giving people a forum to present their innovations, and even just to find potential ways to test their.
Mm-hmm. You're breaking up for me, Alex. I don't know if I'm the only one, but now you look like you're back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Didn't you hear anything I said?
No. It's yes. Oh yeah, just the last statement was a little choppy. Just one follow-up item. I'm always concerned that perhaps there's somebody listening or watching now. Oh, we can't hear her either. So Esther can also answer this question. So let's go to Esther first. And could you please give us some background about how you became involved with PIC? Because what I want to ask is, what's a dragon? If someone's watching this for the first time, what does a dragon do? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Donna. So for me, I was approached by Dave as well to be part of the PIC and the Dragons panel. I feel like I'll start by saying I don't consider myself an innovator at all. I'd be more focused on the coaching aspect and the guiding aspect, and I suppose that's the reason why he approached me in the first place. I would say for me it was a very organic thing. Just starting. I mean, I'm in the industry for about 22, 23 years. It started by seeing how the needs of clients were evolving and how we weren't able to respond to those properly with the processes and the tools and so on that we had. So from there you start kind of getting more interested, in resolving those problems. I lost a client early on because precisely this type of problem, not having the technical capabilities to respond to their changing needs. So I suppose that made me want to become very involved from that point on in talking to those technical teams that were able to give the answers that I don't have that technical background. I can't. So it kind of started from there, and just from seeing innovations that weren't reaching their full potential, or that they were kind of falling flat a little bit, even though the concept itself might have been very good. But perhaps there had been no thought about usability, or what use cases there might be, and so on. So I kind of, it's an area that really interests me, and I kind of made it my business, I suppose, to get embedded in that consultation process, or seek it if it wasn't happening. And I've been very lucky as well to kind of get asked for input at the early stages of prototypes or innovations, both where I was working and outside as well, from people outside my own company. So that gave me a good view, I suppose, both of innovations, flaws and problems, and sometimes sometimes you can see opportunities that perhaps the innovator himself or herself might not be seeing. So I found the chance to join the PIC. That was just fascinating and fantastic. Great experience.
That's great. Thank you. Lori, would you like to tell your story?
Sure. Sorry, just a little technology challenge. Yeah, this was really an interesting adventure for us, because SPI is not a localization company or an LSP. We're more of a technology and content outsourcing company. So we work with global clients more on adding value to their unstructured content. And localization is a part of an end-to-end process. So we had a client that was in the OTT, streaming market in Southeast Asia, and they came to us looking for an approach to dubbing in multiple languages for this market to make it commercially viable, where you have a monthly content subscription of about $5. So human voiceover was not a viable solution for them. So they had come to us asking, could you create a technology solution that was kind of a middle ground between text-to-speech and human voiceover? And that was how we started this whole innovation with SmartDub, is could we actually do this kind of a service-enabled technology where somebody could watch a TV show or a movie or educational content on their cell phone and not have to rely on subtitles, and be able to do it in a cost-effective way? So we didn't know anything really about how to go after the localization market. So we literally started Googling conferences that had to do with language services, and we came upon LocWorld. And then we saw the Process Innovation Challenge, and we're like, what the heck? Let's try and apply for it and see what happens. And I mean, we were jumping up and down when we were even made a finalist. And the people who were at the conference saw we went absolutely insane when we won. You would have thought we won Powerball. We were jumping up and down like children. We were so excited. But it was a really interesting process for us, because the dragons and folks like Dave and Alex were so helpful in helping us synthesize our pitch down to just a few minutes, and so that it would resonate, and it was tight and concise to really meet the needs of the market. So it was, from that perspective, it was super helpful, because I feel like we were given all the tools, being kind of an outsider or a newcomer in this market, to be able to come in and really have a credible showing to the audience. As I would say, an added benefit is I saw a year ago how close-knit the localization community is. I have met so many people in so many different kinds of companies for partnerships, collaboration, potential clients that I would have never met before. One of the other finalists, a company called Language.io, they had a really cool technology for customer support in multiple languages. We would have never known about them, and we've been talking to them for actually since the conference about how we might collaborate with them. So it was such an eye-opening experience to meet so many different kinds of people. going through the process. And also just because you guys are the subject matter experts. So we were able to figure out what was working with our innovation, what wasn't working, who are the markets, where do we need to improve. So it's been an ongoing process from last November until now. And it really is all because of PIC.
Thanks, Lori. That's interesting to hear how you've walked into this. Okay, Patricia, how about you? You're also a competitor in the PIC, so could you tell us your story?
Yeah, that was very funny. I was approached by a dragon, also by Yuka Nakasone, and I did not know I was an innovator. So we met in one of these lunches, local lunches, or one of these events, and she asked me, "What are you doing?" And I told her, "Well, this is what I do in my company." At that time, I was working on an American corporate, and she kind of got very amazed with all the processes and tools that we had implemented internally in the company that for me were just processes and tools. This is what we do. This is what I do. So she really helped me to understand that this is what you're doing. You can do that for other companies. You can implement those processes, this automation into other companies. And you need to go out there and explain what you are doing. And this is what I did for the PIC. And that was amazing. As Lori said, that was an eye-opening experience because I didn't know I was an innovator. I didn't know I had this kind of profile. So going up on stage and I mean, I'm used to speak in public, but that particular day I was shaking and I have to hold on that table in order to try to speak. And that was the first time it was happening to me. But I managed to get through it, and I was the second runner, and I really enjoy it. I really enjoy doing the PIC and getting that speech on 3-5 minutes. I think we were allowed 4 or 5 minutes at that time. Thinking, trying to understand what I was doing and trying to reduce that in a few minutes to explain to people and finding out that people was understanding what I was doing. That was an amazing experience and a great education for me. And that was the start of my own company, of my own consultancy, because I got the power to go out there and start consulting and start supporting other companies in implementing on innovation in the localization process. And I guess we will go through the details of that during the discussion. But going out there and challenging yourself, and you get some pressure to think what you're doing and to think how can you explain what you're doing. It's something that we should all do at some time because it really helps you to keep, to grow in the industry. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think that that something that has come forward with everyone talking this morning is when you first think about the dragons, the people who sit on a panel and vote up and down and that sort of thing, it sounds very judgmental, and they are really more coaches or mentors to help everyone do their best job. And it's very useful to have eyes and ears from outside your organization or your team to look at your project and to talk to you about how it is, the first impression comes across. And so that's what the dragon is. The dragon is, they do vote, but they are also mentors who help you do the best you can. But speaking of mentors, they're how important, let's move away from PIC per se and talk about innovation in your own organization or your own setting. How important are mentors there? Did you rely on that when you were developing your innovation? Or Lori, can you think of, or did you just do this on your own, by golly?
No, it was really driven by a customer request. So we are an outsourcing company. So companies come to us looking for innovation with their processes. Can a manual process be automated? Is there a way to reduce costs and improve efficiencies? So this one was a real gauntlet thrown down because there was nothing like this on the market. You either have text to speech, which is great for certain applications, or you have human voiceover, which is, you know, the Rolls Royce, but there was no real middle ground. So, you know, we had explored what was being done in universities because so many of those kind of innovations come out of that. You know, how do you do synthesized voice? But then how do you commercialize it? So we looked at the different companies that have that base technology and how do we build on it? So it really was going out in the market, looking at companies who have the expertise, you know, companies like Nuance, and then seeing what's available and how do you make it better? So how do you take a kernel, say, of technology and add subject matter expertise on top of it to create a process that creates something new? So it's kind of what we do as a company overall, as it relates to content, but it was more, how do you do this in a market? We don't do anything in localization today. So it was a really interesting challenge. And when it started, the voices were very flat. It sounded very much like text to speech. So it was almost like using a soundboard that you see, you know, that you see at rock concerts and stuff, with how do you jiggle the screens up and down to modulate a voice or create different pitch and that kind of thing. And it was months and months of trial and error of doing that to actually get it where it is and become more of an automated process.
Thanks, Lori. Patricia, yes.
Want to step on anybody's. I know. In my case, just to put it in a from another point of view, I started my innovation journey by talking about tools. We need tools. We have to do things with tools. We need to develop tools. But what I've learned in the last couple of years is that the focus should not be that much in the tools, but also in the process. And maybe this is thanks to the process innovation channel. So what I'm doing right now is really understanding the processes so you can apply certain tools to the processes. But most of the time what I have realized is that the innovation is outside of industry, meaning that traditionally or industry, my impression is that we've been kind of serving all the sources, all the requests for the different content sources, and trying to adapt and to find a way to process those different content sources, no matter no matter how the type of files, what were the requests. We were trying to find workarounds and processes to accommodate to the requests. While I'm seeing now the innovation is going out there and educating those different content sources where we will get sources for translation in order to do things in a way that will facilitate and will enable continuity and automation in the localization process. So I think it's good for us to start, looking outside and stopping and telling everybody, hey, it's really you that need to accommodate to us if you want to save money, to get more quality, and also to automate the processes. And I think that's also the part of innovation in the process that, in my opinion, we should be looking at right now.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. In fact, several of our contestants in the challenge have had a technically oriented. In fact, we sometimes have two types of innovations to compete. Mm-hmm. But in our world, I think more and more now, we're intertwined. Everybody is. There's always going to be a technological aspect, but then there, of course, has to be a process aspect to that technology.
It's not one against the other at all. They have to work together. But it's not always a technology only. It's a technology has to be a link to this process, and this process has to, shift left, move to the content, because those are the guys that need to accommodate to localization. And I'm sure, Lori, you had to do a lot of education and a lot of control in all the sources you got in order to be able to apply your process and to succeed in that challenge.
Yeah, your point is really well taken, because it forced us to look at how we were actually taking this to market, where we initially thought our core market was going to be movie studios and, you know, real commercial type of operations. What we found was the feedback was universally, well, it doesn't sound like George Clooney. You know, it doesn't sound like a human. And the point was, it's not, we know it's not human. It's synthetic, but it certainly sounds a lot better than text to speech. And it forced us to pivot on how we were marketing this, because that core market was not open to it a year ago. They still had, it has to be human. And so where we found other successes in markets that didn't have a preconceived notion of what the voice had to sound like. So and that's where, like, when COVID hit, suddenly people had to get messaging out faster, and they didn't care that it didn't sound like a famous person. It sounded good enough, and the cost was good, and the time to market was fast. So if you could turn around a video on COVID or on information security in a matter of hours and get it out in a dozen languages globally, that was good enough. And that was, so it was having an open mind to both the technology and the process to be able to make it successful. So I completely agree with you, Patricia.
Yeah, exactly. Setting this expectation, making, you know, helping people to understand that maybe what they want or what they think they want is not what they need, that things can be done in a different way and the result can be very positive. I agree, totally agree.
Thanks to both of you. I'd like to turn back to our dragons a little bit. When we talk about mentorship, what are the sorts of things that you see that come in as proposals for the challenge that if you could tell them a few things right now would improve their presentation to begin with? In other words, what sorts of things are early mistakes that people make when they bring their innovation to us to consider? Which of you, would one of you like to go first?
Yeah,
Alex?
I've noticed a few things, I would have to say. And it's funny because it's a good question, because sometimes it's really challenging to choose among the proposals which ones are worthy of, you know, of further exploration. And I think sometimes, you know, the proposals are too vague, so they don't talk about the benefits of the innovation as much. They often talk about the problem that has brought up their, you know, that has motivated them, I guess, to find a different solution to a problem. So they spend a lot of time maybe explaining the problem and almost justifying why the innovation is necessary, but not the innovation. So we've had cases where, again, the case study of the issue that a lot of companies are facing is explained, but then they lack clarity when explaining the innovation itself, and most importantly, the benefits that the innovations will bring. And that is often the issue when we are hard pressed to choose, you know, to select candidates to go to the next step. So sometimes we do go back to the people who submitted the proposal and ask for some specific information or specific examples, but that's one thing that I definitely noticed, that we have to kind of go back and make sure they're focusing on the innovation and not so really more on the solution than the problem. And then I think, like Patricia was saying, a lot of times companies or people don't realize they're innovators or that they have an innovation, right? Maybe, and maybe it's some new process or new tool or something that they've done internally just to solve their own problem, and they don't realize that that same solution could be applied to many other cases, right? Even if you kind of have to generalize your innovation a little more to show the applicability on a broader scale. So I think those are few of the things that I've seen as dragons anyways. And I think that when and our role has evolved also during this PIC, and it's I think it's kind of cool because even the dragons are a little bit on a rolling basis with the PIC. Like we kind of rotate, and we'll be dragons on some PICs and then not on others, and then maybe step back in. So you're able to see the evolution of the proposals as well as how the process is working. And if we can, as dragons, also kind of identify potential innovators among the network that we have, just like Yuka did with Patricia, and kind of talking to people and understanding the kind of solutions or the kind of creative solutions that people are developing in-house, and help them recognize that is an innovation, and encourage them to actually go through the PIC process, which is a really helpful way to hone in on what your innovation is really about. How do you do an elevator pitch about your innovation, and then kind of opening up the possibilities from there. So I think it's, in the lifetime of the PIC, I think a lot of these things have developed in a really nice way.
Thank you, Alex. Esther, would you like to add to that or bring some other focus?
There isn't much more to add. I totally agree with Alessandra. I would say she did mention applicability, and I think that's perhaps one of the big areas that I think sometimes can be a bit of a problem. Sometimes the submissions might be about a very, very specific case where the innovation cannot be applied elsewhere. It's really in the one context where it's gonna work. So that has been one of the problems that we've given feedback about in the past. I would like to say one thing. Actually, it's not answering your question, but it's just something Alessandra was mentioned, made me think of, and Patricia before as well. I think we've seen more and more of or a bigger number of innovations now, more related perhaps to the human aspect. I think in the first few editions, it was very much about the technology. We've seen a lot about artificial intelligence, machine translation, and innovations related to internationalization and so on. Lately, I think we've seen a little bit more of more softer problems, if you like, perhaps to resolve human problems. I remember at the Portugal PIC, that's the one where I was a dragon. Two of the innovations that I really loved. One of them was from Translated for automating the process to screen reviewers and resolve the big problem, of selecting the right resources for the right job at scale quickly, and then freeing up time to have kind of deeper engagement where it matters with that time that you win. So I love that one. And I love the winning submission, which was about increasing conversion by, it was basically applying neuroscience principles to the way we translate or transcreate, or it was basically copywriting rather than translation. I love that one because I felt it was very human. It's solving a problem that technology alone, you wouldn't think of it because it's not a problem as such. It's a gap, but not a problem that you're trying to fix. It's an opportunity that is there. So I love seeing those types of innovations coming through. And I think that there's been more of those lately, which is fantastic.
I love that, Esther, that it's not solving a problem, but it's opening up opportunities. That's very cool. Yeah, way to look at innovation as well. Less reactive. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to pose one more question for a round for discussion, but I want to mention to everyone that's here that we're going to have questions and answers after that. And so if you have a question, you could go on and put it in the chat box so that we could have a list of, I don't know, at the rate we're going, maybe one or two questions, but it's great. What I want to shift to a little bit now is, as an innovator in your organization, or is an innovator in one's organization, how do you get to be heard? How do you approach the C-level or your manager to allow you to go forward with this idea? How do you get support? How do you bring on a team? In other words, how do you just go from idea to actual thing? Does somebody would someone like to start with that? Because we have several perspectives here and I'd love to hear them all. Like,
yeah, I guess I can start.
Okay.
Okay, that's difficult. I mean, that's not a nice road, because especially in big corporations or large corporations, there are other priorities than localization. Unfortunately, and I'm kind of being a little bit pessimistic now, but unfortunately, localization is seen as a huge spend with low revenue, because sometimes it's very difficult to calculate or to evaluate how much market are you opening thanks to a localized content. And maybe that's because in the past, things were done in a very black box way, and there was no clear understanding of the industry, not the industry, of the requester, of the non-industry people, of what we were doing in the industry. So getting approvals, getting money, basically the only way you can do that was demonstrating how much they were going to save if they were applying your innovation. So it's just a matter of making numbers and trying to say, okay, this costs that much now, and the opportunity is that you're going to save that much. It's not that you're going to get that more, you know, it's very difficult to calculate the return of investments in the traditional way. It's easier to calculate the amount you're going to save if you implement this or that process. The good news is that in the past, I would say in the last 5-6 years, the process was what it was. There was translation memory, there were TMS, and there was not more. Now that we have machine translation, I mean, only applying or introducing machine translation in a process, that would imply important savings in the whole process. But now that we have all this artificial intelligence, all new processes, new ways of doing things, new requirements and new scope, as Lori says, I mean, in the past, nobody would thought about doing some doubling outside a studio, and that's very expensive. But now this can be done in a different way. And it doesn't mean that what we used to be done in the past is not needed. No, it may be needed, it's still needed, but for certain public, for certain areas, for other public, for other scope, can be done in a different way. And this is what is changing now, the things or the impact, it's very different, should be very different. It's not the traditional impact that everything has to be perfect, documentation has to be published. If you make a mistake, there is no way of changing anything. Now things are working in a different way. And I think that's an opportunity for us to implement and to enhance the traditional technology that was very stable and very solid. And once you get it right forever. But this may no longer be applicable now, because the content is different, the processes are different, the requirements are different, the goals or the scopes are very different. So understanding how things can be done in a different way, how can you reach different markets, that the expectations that were set in 5 years ago, 6 years ago are no longer the same expectation. Understanding how things are changing in our industry will bring us opportunity to explain or to get the buy-in from this CEO, from these corporates, to understand, to implement an innovative localization process.
Thanks, Patricia. Lori, I think you were starting at the same time there.
No, I agree with what Patricia's saying. What we have found is that localization tends to be way downstream. It's like the last step, and you're scrambling for dollars. And it's almost like an afterthought with some of the customers we talk to. And what this has done is brought that discussion way further upstream, more at the beginning of the process. So when you're talking to the client now, we're having discussions around, are you looking at this being global? Because you can do that right out of the gate by looking at multiple languages that could be released simultaneously and cost effectively. Also, at least in the US, accessibility with the American with Disabilities Act is really expanding. And it's given us a much larger market for accessible content to be out. So that's been a big growth area. And really with COVID and the education market, with students having to go online, so much of this content was not accessible and was not readily available in different languages that were going to be needed. So being able to convert that content very quickly instead of having to create completely new content is cost effective and can get out the door quickly. So I think it's given us, it's always the dollars at the end of the day, but it gives you access to different points to look at, where can you make the sale, where before it was just one endpoint at the end where the localization manager said, oh, by the way, we have to convert this now. So I think there's bigger dollars, more upstream to go after many different buying centers within an organization to look at these type of language solutions.
Alex, I see you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I mean, a few thoughts here. I think it largely depends on the type of organization that you're working with. Some organizations are better at fostering innovation within the organization, and some organizations are not as good at it. So, it depends on how receptive the organization is in general. I think an organization that allows for experimentation and some of that, kind of R&D or trial and error, because you can't, if you only always operate reactively when you have a problem and you need to solve it, you're always playing catch up, right? If you do have and plan for, like strategically in your planning, you do plan for some of the initiatives that you put in place to be exclusively for trial and error and experimentation, that opens up a bunch of possibilities. Then you already, maybe get ideas on how you could solve problems when they actually surface, because it's not always the case that when you find a problem, you can think immediately of a possible solution. So you have to kind of create this R&D initiative every time you have a new problem. So if you're kind of more proactive about it and just interested in innovative solutions, I think this should be part of a department's planning, regardless of the problems you're facing or not. All right, so it kind of sets you up already to be ready to innovate when the problems do arise. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that Patricia was saying is totally true. Usually localization is kind of bottom of the priority list, and it's seen as a cost center. And and we talk about this a lot in our field, and it's not going to change organically. We need to drive that change. We need to, be more visible in our organizations. And I don't mean evangelizing, I mean PR. I mean tooting your own horn, showing the results of things you've done, or showing like an interesting experiment that you've done, maybe even if it failed, and if you are lucky enough that you operate within an organization that does have some initiatives that foster innovation, take advantage of those. So like I work with companies that do hackathons. So they're just like 2-3 days where people are able to stop working on their like daily job, and they focus on doing some creative projects in groups, and there's people who propose projects and then groups that join the different projects to work on them. So participate, propose a localization related project, have other people work on those projects with you. And so yeah, we just need to be a little bit more proactive about showing off all that we contribute to these organizations, and not talk about costs, or even calling out that the cost that you spend in localization is puny compared to the return that you get. Like, it's a no-brainer usually to do a localization project and to invest in it. And we just need to be better PRs of ourselves.
Thank you, Alex. Esther, something I see, Patricia, you've unmuted too, so you're next.
Yeah. So just to add to what Alessandra was saying, and I think sometimes we don't do ourselves any favors by having that conversation on cost. And I think turning it to speed sometimes helps a lot, because normally, the people we're working with and for, they might not care so much about cost as speed. Can I get this out the door faster? That equates to sales in many cases. So that's where it hurts in a way, more so than cost. It's quality and speed, I think. It's more so than cost very often. So turn the conversation to that, and perhaps try to collaborate with these other people. Like, Alessandra was talking about PR. Sometimes even finding a colleague in another department that they want to come up with a way of doing things faster or whatever. Collaborate with them, and together, come up with that process. They'll be advocating for you already. They'll be advocating to their peers as well, to their leadership, and that's a way, I think, of getting stuff done.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And we have to move away from our traditional approach that we know a lot what we're doing, and we keep on talking about business word like localization, globalization. Though they don't understand and they don't care. So you need to move away from that. We have to detach from all our jargon, and we have to try to speak the words they want to hear. And as Esther said, move away, speed, explain the impact, not on money, but on how many people will be able to get that movie localized, even if the translation is not perfect. But there's no need for that, because otherwise it would never go that movie localized. So that's what you need to explain, and be innovative. Nobody in the company, in a traditional corporate, will go to you and ask you, how can we innovate here? Nobody's going to do that, because that's not their business. They don't care. So we are the ones that need to find a way of, proposing, understanding what can be done, understanding the company, the requirements, what can be done, and going up with those proposals. And to be very honest, if you don't get hurt, if you don't get any attention, maybe that's not the right company to stay with. I know that's not an easy decision to take, but sometimes it's just basically, you may be trying very hard to get innovation, to get things changed. It doesn't happen. If you go to another company, automatically you become the queen of stage. So it's really that sometimes we don't even know that how good or how powerful we can be, because we are trapped in a particular environment, on a way of doing things. And it's good to get out of the comfort zone and share and learn from others. So I don't want to be catastrophic here, but that's a reflection that sometimes we have to do.
That's a wonderful point, Patricia. It's true. The environment you're working in, if it's stifling, it would be great if you could find some other place to be, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been looking in the chat window, and there was a question about just a previous presentations, and are they there? So if you're interested, we don't have a full library set up yet, but Alex has posted a link to our YouTube channel, so you can see a lot of the information there. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't see any other questions from the chat group right now, so that means I get to ask another one. And that is, what sorts of platforms are there out there for innovators? I mean, other than the PIC, are there other resources for people who are interested in promoting their idea and or gaining traction within their organization? And I'm just going to throw this out to everybody. If you know of anything, for example, I know that there's a group in online, and now I'm sure they were physical a year ago, called Women in Innovation. And it's a sort of it appears to be sort of a mentoring group for other women in organizations that are have great ideas. But have any of you run across other resources for people who are potential winning innovators? Not so much? Laura.
I think this group this was pivotal for us, being part of LocWorld and the Process Innovation Challenge, because it opened us up to completely different markets and opportunities than we had ever considered. So being part of Women in Localization has been fantastic. Meeting other women who are both in localization and in corporate settings has opened a lot of doors to us. And then also trying to replicate this in other markets. So we look at other target markets as a company that we're focused on. And what we found is things like around accessibility. You see that at conferences in the education market, in the financial services market, in healthcare. So it's opened up the same type of opportunities to be able to talk about these kind of services as it relates to these more horizontal markets as well. So this was a start of a great journey by being able to be part of PIC.
Patricia, were you?
Yeah, aligned with what Lori said, we are very lucky in this industry because we are across all industries. So looking for innovation hubs outside of industry will very well fit the purpose. In my particular experience here, I'm based in Barcelona, we have a very strong community of innovation, and the city council and different entities are really investing and supporting innovation. And if you're even a woman, you even have more chances. So after the PIC, I got involved in different local initiatives related to innovation. And again, my innovation is basically helping companies to get the digital content localized, so to go to different markets, thanks to enable opening that website or the product localized in different languages. And I found a lot of opportunities there, and I learned a lot on the requirements of potential customers going through these innovations hubs which are more local, and they can be more from a technology point of view or even more from a process point of view. So again, stepping out of our comfort zone, moving away from your little wall, you will find that there are a lot of opportunities. And now after this COVID, or in this COVID area, getting in touch with somebody through a camera is so easy, so easy. I even got involved in an organization called Womepreneur, Woman Entrepreneurship. And we've been talking with Silicon Valley companies and pitching or innovation or processes with these companies, and we've done that at home. So it's really looking for this opportunity, because there are a lot of them that we are not aware because we thought we never need them.
Thanks, Patricia. Alex, did you want to say something?
I mean, I don't have any specific initiatives, but I just wanted to, kind of reinforce what Patricia said. I think looking outside of our field, because it speaks to applicability, right? I mean, a lot of the innovations we've seen are meant, there are localization innovations, but they're meant for whoever's going to use the service ultimately. So, and our clients are oftentimes not in localization. So definitely finding related industries, or maybe target industries that you either already operate in or would like to operate in, and finding if there's any innovation type of challenges, competitions, or network or whatever in those industries, I think would be hugely beneficial.
The power
And
of
you
networking.
women use that, absolutely what Patricia said. I mean, this is a women panel, but
yeah,
now we kind of have the spotlight. Let's use it.
and sometimes
Right.
you don't really know what you want to say until you understand what are the challenge of the customer. So I have evolved a lot from my initial idea to what I'm doing now, and this is thanks to all the input I got from this other industry. So yeah, we have to have a very open mind and pivot all the time, because you have a core service that can be changed and can be customized based on the customer requirements. And that's the only way of knowing those requirements, is going there and asking and meeting people without those challenges that we can solve.
Thank you, Patricia. Esther, would you like to add anything to that? You don't feel obligated.
Yeah, no, I think everything has been said. I don't think I have much more to add.
That's the problem. I realized I've been calling on you last every time, and so that doesn't leave a lot of opportunities. But I want to thank each of you.
It's a fantastic, spread of brilliant expertise here. So listening to it as well is fantastic.
It's a great group of innovators who happen to be women. So I appreciate your participating today. I haven't seen any other questions to pose to you at this point, but we do now have some time for networking. Alex, you want to jump up here and say a word or two?
You bet.
Thank you.
Yeah. Donna, thank you so much for moderating. Just such a pleasure to listen in into this fascinating conversation. And thanks, Alex, Esther, Lori, and Patricia. Again, your contributions have been so valuable to growing the Process Innovation Challenge. And I know I speak for Dave too when I thank you very much for taking time with us today. We're gonna, we recorded the whole session today, and we'll publish this to the PIC website and share it across social media. The whole point of this PIC Fireside Chat series is to inspire young innovators, or just innovators in general in the localization industry out there, to submit and to get exposure for what they're doing. So don't be afraid. Come join us. If you have an innovation, an idea, we're a friendly group of people. These ladies are helping us with mentoring as well. We welcome you to join the Process Innovation Challenge. So I would like to briefly just give a shout out to Yuka Nakasone. Yuka was on our last panel here, and today we invited these four ladies, but without Yuka, the PIC would not have happened. She's the global at Intento, and Yuka has brought us more innovators and innovations than anyone else. So thanks so much for your contribution to Yuka. With that, I think I'll send us back to the tables for a little bit of networking. The platform is going to be open for another 20 minutes or so. If you have any specific questions for our panelists, feel free to chat and meet with them. But I think without further ado, we'll send us back. So thanks again, ladies. Such a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks all.
Thank you.